Why is being vegan or veganism the most difficult thing you will ever do with your life? So yes, more difficult than being a doctor or a lawyer or a rocket scientist. The most difficult thing you'll ever do in your life is be vegan. And it's probably not for the reasons that you're thinking. So if you're watching this video, the likelihood is, just through probability, you're not vegan, and therefore you can leave one of the standard operating procedure comments on a channel that you've found that's vegan. So you'll be able to leave what I call the low IQ comments. But if you're wondering actually, well, what is vegan? What is veganism? And you're probably thinking this is a bit of a different video from seeing how you can sustainably lose weight. So on this channel, I coach people into showing how you can live a weight loss lifestyle. So doing everything that makes you lean every day and having fun doing that. But I always say, yeah, and I'm vegan, and then I'll introduce what I'm eating, and I might say, well, I'm vegan, and then I'll just say high sugar, low fat, low protein, vegan. That's, sorry for the noise. That's the best way to live a sustainably healthy and lean life. But yeah, if you want to actually use your brain for a second and think, well, what actually is veganism? This is simply the term that you can use for someone who wants to reduce the suffering on this planet. So for me, the way I interpret vegan or veganism is the fundamental understanding that I'm going to die one day. The animals that are living right now, they're all going to die one day. My parents and my family and my friends, all the people I've ever met in my life, they're all going to die. And some sooner than later. And everyone around me that I ever meet in my life is going to die. And then the history of all the people that have ever lived have died. So the way I see it is, why should I cause such suffering so just talking about food. So the main way that animals are killed is for food, but yes, there's other ways that animals are killed for us. For example, in animal testing. So there are people who spend the day all day setting fire to dogs to burn them alive to see what happens when you get burnt. And somehow we think that that can be used in order to help us in some way. So there's that. But the main way we are causing suffering is through animals. So killing animals, breeding them into existence to kill them. So I believe that there isn't any meaning to life, and this channel is a positive channel. So I think veganism is introducing positivity into the world, because instead of just going, well, I'm just going to do what everyone else does and just mindlessly pay for something that's going to cause suffering in the world, you go, well, I'm not special. I'm not at the center of the universe. There's not really any reason for me to be here other than to, I think, just enjoy life, see the beauty in the world, and just covering the world and creating the world into basically one big farm where we basically are now breeding humans into existence just to kill them. So what I mean by that is the biggest industrial complexes, the two biggest. The first one is the industrial military complex. So that's a trillion dollar industry, and that's to do with the fear of death of human beings. So the thing that human beings fear most is the fear of death. So on this channel, I help to try and break through the conditioning to that 1% of people who will listen and realize that their life, the reason why they're living their life the way they are is because they're just being conditioned into just doing the same thing. and essentially you're just being sold a lie and just living a life that is being told that you need to do. You need to live a certain way. So what I mean by we're being bred into just being killed, so essentially you've got the military industrial complex, which is eventually, yeah, if we use our thermonuclear intercontinental ballistic thermonuclear warheads, that's the end of life on this planet, and I think that's eventually what we'll get to. And maybe if you're alive young now, you might be able to see that, so that'll be fun, won't it, one day? And the other way, the other biggest industrial complex on the planet is the medical industry, the pharmaceutical industry, petrochemical industry, the oil industry, food industry, and big animal agriculture. This whole complex, industrial complex, is essentially about creating sick people and then essentially treating them with the modern healthcare industry, which basically kills you. So the foods that you're eating are causing you to get chronic diseases, so like heart disease and cancer, from high fat, high protein animal products. And then when you get fat and sick from these products, if they haven't killed you already, you then are sold the lie of the modern healthcare industry, where doctors are just told, well, this is the drug that you need to give someone, and it won't ever reverse their disease. It'll just treat the symptoms and not the cause. So, for example, with cancer treatment, since essentially the advent of modern cancer treatment, sort of in the 1970s, so you could say maybe about 1975. So in the last 50 years, there hasn't been an improvement on overall mortality rates from cancer treatment. So that being for most cancers, okay, so for about 90% of most cancers, there hasn't been an improvement in overall mortality rate from being diagnosed to death. So that might be through, obviously, you've got chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and surgery. So you either burn it or poison it or cut it out. And most people, for 90% of people, the overall mortality rate hasn't improved. So since 1975, your odds of surviving are no better. But all you ever hear about is, oh, but you need to be on radiotherapy or chemotherapy or have surgery. And we don't really know exactly how many people get killed from having radiotherapy, chemotherapy, the way that we treat cancer. We don't actually know how many people are actually being killed from this. So there's that. So the most difficult thing you can do is to open your eyes to realize how the world works. So I think most people who start to put together how the world actually works then get labeled as cranks or conspiracy theorists or weirdos, whatever other words that get used essentially for anyone who doesn't just work the 9 to 5 job they hate, eating the foods that are making them fat and sick at breakfast, lunch, and tea. And then when you meet your friends or your colleagues or whoever it might be, you all just do the same thing and say the same thing. You eat the same thing. You all get fat and sick and you're all dying. Everyone is dying of the same diseases. So around me, there's people that I've met in my life who have told about this is how you can get healthy. I vegan, low fat, low protein, high sugar. And two real people, okay, two real people I've met in my life in the last 1.5 years who told me that they were keto. They were absolutely, definitely not vegan. And they were proud of their lifestyle. They said that these are two men. So one was in their 40s and one was in their 60s. They both told me they were proud of who they were. They both told me that they were simple men, just going along in their day to day, and that they were animal lovers. They gave to charity, especially cancer charities, and they were overall a good person. And within 1.5 years of this, so in the last 1.5 years, they both have died of cancer. So one died of colon cancer and one died of pancreatic cancer. So these are both cancers of organs of the digestive system. So not only is killing all these animals around us, which then means that the products, so the flesh and bodily secretions of these animals is not only killing them, it's killing you. So because most people live the same way, it's not because a minority of people who are living differently, or maybe a lifestyle that is different to you, is causing you disease or you to be sick. So the lifestyle that someone leads, the lifestyle that they lead, or the lifestyle that most people lead, is therefore what is causing you to become fat and sick and diseased. It's not something that you've never done with your life. So I always say, if the road that you took, the road that you chose to take, led you to that destination of heart disease and cancer, was it worth it? And yeah, if you're young enough watching this video, in your 20s, maybe your 30s, or maybe in your 50s and 60s, and you still got years, decades left to live, just look at the health statistics, the Western health statistics, and see how many people are dying of. So firstly, look what are the biggest killers, and then see how many there are. So there's millions of people dying of heart disease, millions of people dying of cancer, so quite often of organs of the digestive system. So for example, colon cancer. And colon cancer, particularly in the West, in the UK and the US, is going up very rapidly at the moment, colon cancer. And just take a moment to think, well, there's only a very small amount of people, essentially I call it the 99% of the 1%, who the 99% are most people, and therefore the 1% of people might contain people who are vegan or just a bit different. There's not, let's say, 50% of the population, so 50% of the Western population is suffering from heart disease. 50% of the population is not vegan. It's only a very small amount, okay? A very small amount which are vegan. And I'm out here in nature, or as much as I can be, and I'm standing in a field that is being used for grazing. And as you can see, the beautiful landscape behind me, there are some trees and some wildlife, but mostly, even out here in the middle of nowhere, it's grazing. And then as you go further down into the valley, it'll turn more into crops, which mostly will be fed to animals. So I think veganism is the most difficult thing to do. It's the most difficult thing you'll ever do with your life, because you will become the outsider, the 1%. So socially, you become isolated, you become labeled as an extremist, maybe a terrorist even. And all you're trying to do is trying to reduce the suffering on this planet. So the main reason why veganism is the most difficult thing you'll ever do is because you'll come to the realization that the history of humanity and the whole legacy of humanity, the whole reason we're here, is just to kill. So the history of humanity is violence. That's all our legacy will be. And as I said at the beginning of this video, there is no reason to life. Okay, there's no reason why we're here. So that's why I always say that religion fails you or fails us, because it always puts the human being in the center. It always means that the universe evolves around the human being. So it doesn't matter what, I would say, mainstream religion, Catholic, Christian, Muslim, it always puts the human being in the center, as though there is something special about us. And yes, I agree with the whole main premise of, I think, all religion, all the millions and millions of religions that have ever existed. I think the main premise that I agree with, so the First Amendment is what? Thou shalt not kill. So thou shalt not kill is what religion is here for. But yes, I've never met another vegan in my life. And that cow over there is vegan because, and yeah, I get that stupid comment. People say, oh, well, that's just you labeling another creature that doesn't have any idea about what a human might think. Well, those cows over there aren't causing suffering, deliberately causing suffering. So yes, I would say cows are vegan because they don't go out their way just to cause suffering for fun. So yeah, I'm surrounded by some cows over there. And when I stop as well, as soon as I stop, there's always like a farmer, will come and stop and look at what I'm doing when I'm just standing here as well. And maybe they hear what I'm talking about and then they shoot off. But I think, that's the realization, you'll realize that no, there's no reason to cause such suffering for no reason. So if there was some overall reason for our existence, something special that we were here for, and therefore you could say, well, all of these animals died for us because we're here and we're special and there's a reason. But there isn't. Because I'll die, everyone I know will die, and all the generations of human beings, it'll just fizzle out. However it will, human beings will then go extinct. But that's the thing about real life. There isn't anyone coming to stop us and to challenge our behavior. Just like there is, if you believe or don't believe. I don't believe there is anything out there. I don't believe there's any other species out there. I don't think there's any other gods out there. It's just a bunch of little scared human beings running around on this little rock. And that's another thing I always think is funny, when you get labeled a conspiracy theorist as a vegan, when you challenge someone's behavior. But then someone who is in the mainstream might believe something like the conspiracy of that landing on the moon was a conspiracy. So that's one I always find funny. I know we did go to the moon. We were that stupid to fly to the moon, and all the effort that took. And yes, stupid. Yes, we were stupid flying to the moon, getting to the moon. And what I mean by that is that's another thing people fall for, the fallacy of the intellectual. So for example, Neil deGrasse Tyson is a classic that I always like to mention to people. Whenever someone tells me about, how we have these intellectuals in society and in social media, and people might say, oh, Neil deGrasse Tyson, isn't he really clever? And I call him Neil Disgrace Tyson, because just like everyone else, as soon as you mention veganism to him, sorry about the noise, his IQ goes from that of supposedly Einstein's level, 2000 IQ, or 170 IQ, or 160 IQ, to that of about 3 or 4 IQ, which is what most people are sitting at. And he just says all of the same things that I hear about veganism and killing animals. So no, then you realize there's no such thing as intellectuals or intellectualism in the 21st century. It doesn't exist. And no, we're never going to any other planets. And it always horrifies me at the thought experiment that we would be going to other planets, because if you've got people like that who are at the center of this publicity drive or trying to get people to be, oh yes, we should be going around spreading our DNA around the galaxy, or at least around the solar system, and to other places where life exists. So that always makes me laugh when I see these people and they go, oh, we've discovered signs of life. And I look around and I think, no, they haven't discovered signs of life. All they've discovered, when I would say, when you say, oh, they've discovered life, they see that as a sandwich, their breakfast, their lunch, or their dinner. So what I'm trying to say is, I find it funny, it's catch-22. We hear in 2025 there's some rumblings about, oh, we've discovered life on another world, but yet we still haven't discovered life on this planet. So yes, when Neil deGrasse Tyson gets asked about, oh, well, veganism, he should say, yes, I'm vegan, because this is where life exists. This is the only place that we know that life exists, and the only place where humans will ever live. So when we go to another planet and we supposedly discover life, what will we do with that life? And the reason why all these animals around us that we breed into existence and then kill is because we have the ability to do that. So it's always the more powerful creature or species that comes along and enslaves the other. So these animals around us, they're vulnerable. So is that what we do if we went to one of these other planets in the galaxy? We just discover a new flavor of McDonald's? I don't know. So yes, if you're vegan, keep it up. Proud of you. I know in the 9 years that I've been vegan, every year I become more and more conscious of this fact that we are just here to kill and have fun doing it. And then it's also killing us. So the production of animal products, as you might hear them being called, is also destroying our health on the planet. And yes, I do my bit by not eating animal products. That's better for my health. It's also better for the health of the planet. So yes, when I talk about it to people and ask, well, why aren't you vegan for your children? I'm actually doing more for other people's children, and I'm never going to have children because that is the most selfish thing you'll ever do. So I recommend not having children. And if you really want to have children because you're all hormonal and you just can't stop the thought of children at a certain age, then just adopt. Okay? So just adopt. There are hundreds of millions of children right now who don't have parents for whatever reason. Just adopt. If you really care about having a child, then just adopt. If you really care about other human beings and children. So I hope you enjoy the video. As I say, I try to make these videos every so often, just challenging myself and also challenging other human beings on this planet to engage their brains and start thinking and just see the world for how it is. So yes, one day I'll be dead and so will you, and you'll be able to think back and go, why did I cause so much suffering? So maybe you'll be on your deathbed and you think, I'm all fat and sick and I'm dying of heart disease and cancer and diabetes and high blood pressure and so on, all these chronic diseases. And you'll be able to think back and go, the road that I chose to take that led me here was not